Hi guys, I wanted to do a video to talk a little bit about Gamesalad. This studio is interesting because it allows designers to use a visual language to program with rather than exposure to scripting or things like that. So pretty much what you're going to see today is a tutorial about how to get a simple scene working in Gamesalad where you can use the mouse or a touch input to pick up a circle and drag it to another point on the screen. So the things I found challenging about Gamesalad was that the interface for the Windows version was a little flaky. So it looks like Gamesalad was designed primarily for Macs. I created a project and I sent it to my friend. It wouldn't load on his Mac. He ended up creating one on the Mac, and that worked a lot better. It had a lot more options for prototyping on which version of the iPhone screen you're using, for the resolution of that. The controls look a lot better. So it's obviously a native Mac application that's just been ported quickly to the PC. Once we had that application set up for the Mac, we could transfer it between ourselves fine, and it worked. So I'm going to Wikimedia. So the first thing I want to do is create my circle asset that I'm going to use. I could draw one up in Photoshop, but it's actually surprisingly hard to create a really nice circle. So I'm going to see if I can find one in here. Alright, this looks good. Let's grab this one. It's an SVG file. That's a vector graphics file. We need to get this image exactly to the right size. I want a file that's an actual 64 by 64 pixel image, and they don't have an option for that, so I need a way to render that. Now I could possibly do that in Illustrator, but I don't have that at the moment. I found this site that can rasterize it for you. So we're going to choose SVG. We want it at 64 by 64. Thank you. Now we can pop it into Photoshop, and it looks here like these little pieces aren't done very well, but that's partly just because of this checkerboard background. It's actually fine if you have it on a white background. Control I will invert that image, save, and that's the circle that we want. So the reason we want it white is because then we can tint it to any color that we want, including black. So here we are in Gamesalad. So I'm going to create a new project, call it Circle Guy Prototype. And here's where you can choose the resolution. This was much better on the Mac. Now the important thing here is to choose resolution independence. Otherwise, every actor in your scene, the image that represents that actor will be the exact size of that actor, and the scaling won't work very well. What we want to be able to do is create an actor that's 32 by 32, but have an image that's actually 64 by 64. That way, when this runs on a Retina display, it will show up without scaling artifacts. Let's just set up our scene so it's not that color. And I'm going to create our actor. So we want to save our whole thing into Alright, we want an image for Circle Guy, so let's move it first. We want that image inside the project under images, and then we drag that in here. There we go. And then we've got Circle Guy, so now we can add him to the scene. And let's check his size. So we actually want his size to be 32 by 32. And that way it'll work on Retina displays. There we go. Check our scene size. It's 325, 480, so that's the normal iPhone. Alright, so now we've got our actor. We've got this mode where we can actually preview our app. And what I want to happen is when I click, I can drag this around. making sure we've got our panel up here, which you can get to with this button here. Then we can create our first rule that allows us to pick up this guy. Now our library of sort of functions that we can use is here, so we're going to have a rule that when I touch him with the mouse or my finger and the touch is inside the actor, then we're going to set the actor state to held. Gamesalad has these things called prototypes, which is the base data definition for a particular actor, and then when an actor exists in an actual scene, it becomes an instance of that prototype. Now generally the instance is locked so that only things like the position can change from the prototype. You can actually unlock an instance and then edit its variables independent of the prototype, and it sort of becomes detached from the prototype at that point. But that's probably not what you want to do most of the time, unless you're creating a very specific scene and you want an instance to behave in a very different way. What I found with Gamesalad is it's very tricky to put a property like held onto the actor and have other actors be able to reference that property. If I want to do anything with this property, this held property, I need to put it on the game. And that's probably okay in this case because our game is going to be very simple. I know when something is held that it's going to be this circle guy. I need a way to investigate my scene and pick a particular actor for me to select. I need to be able to store a reference to that actor and be able to refer to it later on. And that's something that I have had a lot of trouble trying to do in Gamesalad. I'm going to create a rule, call this pickup. We want it to occur when we get a certain touch event. So this lists all of the different events and things that I can use. So I want it to be touch. When touch is inside. So now what I want to do is set that property to held. So I have to go to game and create a new Boolean property called held. And this will be the default, so held is off by default. Here I can then go and look at when it's touched inside. I want to change held to true, so I've got to change attribute function in my do. Set game held to true. At the moment it's very difficult to find out what's going on because we've got no actual behaviors in there. So one of the things that I want to do is be able to create a new actor that allows us to print out debug text so we can see what's going on. So let's create a new actor. And display text. And we want to show game held. So we go held. We use the little two dots to join them together. And if we go to our actor and pull in the debug text into the scene. And let's try that out. And let's make the debug text not white. So once we click in, the circle held is true, and there's no way to undo that. So now we need a rule. So we'll go back to our circle guy. Got our pickup rule. We need our rule for release. So let's add another rule. Call this release. What we want is, we're going to look at the mouse. We'll try when touch is released. Change attribute. Held is false. That didn't work though. So it's not triggering, so this condition is never becoming true. Get rid of that one and let's add in a mouse button. When mouse is up. Now one of the problems is as we drag across there, the touch is becoming true. So what we want to say here is when touch is pressed, we want to add another one for when touch is inside, we're going to set game held to true. And finally, we need a rule for dragging. What we want to say here is if the attribute if held is true, initially what we want to do is just move the position of the actor to the mouse position. Later on that could interfere with physics, so we might have to do it in a more physics-based manner, but for now we don't care. So let's just grab we do a change attribute. Circle guy position X, we're going to set it to touch 1X. And we're going to add another one for the Y. Okay, let's test that out. Now, what you'll notice is it doesn't work, and it's because the rules only run once. This got me stuck for ages because I thought, well, you set up the rule and it's just going to work, but what you actually need is a timer. And then you set the timer to work every frame, so every 0 seconds. And you can drag this whole rule inside the timer, if it will work. And let's try that. And there we go. I really don't like the lack of the ability for an actor to easily reference another actor. That took me ages to figure out what to do there. I also had a lot of trouble figuring out that I needed to put this code inside a timer so that the drag would happen every frame instead of just once. And the other thing I struggled with was initially when I created the project and when it's created by default, it's not running in the resolution independent mode. So if you drag in a 64 by 64 image, your actor is always 64 by 64. And if you resize him to 32 by 32, you're only seeing part of that image. So it just didn't work at all. The interface, especially this Windows interface, is very clunky. This panel here with all of the rules, while it might be okay for a designer that has no experience with programming, finding the rule that you want and the awkwardness of trying to drag one thing inside of another is not that great. It's you know, it doesn't work that well. I think maybe it works better on the Mac version, because that seems to be where it's natively built for. But I do like what they've done with it. Like, it's quite clever. The nesting, and that I can actually build functionality out of these simple components is quite clever. Personally, I think I would prefer to just code it, and I don't think at the moment that I would generally recommend this. It might serve its purpose of being able to deploy prototypes to iOS as quickly as possible. So overall, I think Gamesalad was a really interesting experience to play with. I found it quite frustrating that it hid a lot of the things that I'm used to being exposed, and that it took me longer to figure out some of those things than it normally would, but at the same time I got stuff working in it really quickly. So I think I'd probably play with it a bit further and see what I could do. Great to have you guys with me today. If there's any feedback you'd like to give me, send it my way. See you later, guys.